Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat. Hey, Lori, how are you today?
Hi, Omar. I'm doing wonderful. How's everything on your side of the world?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Yeah? Cannot complain.
Good.
So really excited about today's guest.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Rachel Freiman, and she's the CEO of MindStrong Fitness. She is a lover of donuts. And she's the author of the best-selling book, Becoming MindStrong, The Truth About Health, Fitness, and the BS That's Holding You Back. Mm-hmm. And so she's had like mega years, 15 or more years in classroom instruction, certifications, sports nutrition, behavior modification, and the list goes on. And she was just a delight to have on because, you know, we love donuts, right? So.
Yeah, that's the way to start off December during this holiday season. If anyone can help us with some kind of taboo foods, Rachel will be that person. So
right.
Let's jump into the show.
Okay.
Hey, Rachel, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. I'm looking forward to a good conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for stopping by, Rachel. We're really happy to have you here. And I know you're going to drop a lot of good things for people today. And so we want to welcome you, Rachel Freiman. She's the CEO and author of Becoming MindStrong and the host of the podcast, Becoming MindStrong. And Rachel, you teach women how to lose weight while still eating donuts. So they never have to diet again, which I love that. So you have more than 15 years of classroom instruction and certifications in personal training, sports nutrition, and behavior modification. So thank you for being here again. And could you just give us a little background info, how you got to becoming MindStrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of my favorite quotes out there is about, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but, the thing you struggle with the most becomes the thing of which you're most passionate in teaching. And that's absolutely the best way I can summarize my journey. I was a middle school music teacher for years and years, and just got into weight training and nutrition and all this as my own personal release. If you've ever taught, if you've ever been around children, that it's very rewarding, but it's giving, right? You have to show up as your best, most calm self all the time. So I started going to the gym just as a release at the end of the day. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was a hot mess. I was injured all the time. I didn't see results because I didn't understand the nutrition piece. And it was frustrating. And I wanted to give up more times than I can count, right? So very organically, I think the teacher in me just kept studying, kept learning, kept tweaking, kept adjusting. And the more I learned about what I now call capital T truth, I was shocked. I was shocked by how much BS exists in the weight loss industry with point systems and shake systems and frozen meals. And it was like pulling back the Wizard of Oz curtain, right? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the teacher in me just wanted to shout from the rooftops that, these are learnable skills, that the diet industry is designed to make it confusing. Because if you don't understand how it works, you got to keep shoveling money at them. But as an educator, it was burning me alive to see people that I loved shoveling money into this system, just knowing there was a better way. So it was a very organic process. It started as a little side hustle when I was still teaching and working 12-hour days. And because I was doing something so wildly different in this industry, I was educating instead of selling these systems. It took off, it exploded. And at this point of this recording, we've helped over 2,500 women lose weight, keep it off. And I always say at my core, I'll never consider myself a coach. I'll always consider myself an educator. And that's exactly what I'm in the industry to do.
When you pulled back that curtain, what was the big thing that stuck out for you? I guess I'm sure there's many, but what was the number one thing that stuck out to you that this is ridiculous and I have to share basically I want to call it evils of that.
I like that term. Yeah. It was really the foundation of weight loss. I mean, there are a million things we could talk about, the mindset piece that's missing and the all in, all out mindset. But when we speak logistically, it's the fact that every single shake system, every single point system, every single frozen meal system out there, they're simply getting you to eat less calories than you can burn. And they're doing it in a really sneaky, really well marketed way where you don't understand what they're doing. So if you want to keep it going, you have to keep throwing your money at them. When the reality is that someone can teach you how to accomplish the exact same thing, how to eat less calories than you burn, but doing it eating food you actually enjoy, right? I use donuts because that's one of my biggest passions in life. I love donuts. Oh
my gosh.
Right?
I do. I remember when.
Can you, when I learned, like, wait a second, I don't have to be eating grilled chicken and rice every meal in my life. I can have a donut and still lose weight. That's the part of me that was like, how at that point in life, I was probably 30-ish. Like, how am I 30 years old and nobody has ever taught me this before? And that's where I talk about pulling back the curtain on just how much BS is out there.
But don't you think there is a difference in the way calories or food, I guess, is metabolized in the body? So we've all heard broccoli is metabolized vastly different than a candy bar, for example.
100%. There's two very different conversations. Some people think, well, that person's losing weight, so they must be eating healthy. And one of the big, again, capital T truths that we teach is that there is a very distinct difference between eating for weight loss and eating healthy. In theory, you could eat nothing but Krispy Kreme donuts and lose weight if you're in a caloric deficit. Yeah. And you would die before you could show off your new bikini bod, right? Because you're missing the vitamins and minerals that are going to exist in broccoli and more nutritious foods. But the big mindset shift that we're determined to make is we get people away from the labels good and bad foods or allowed and not allowed. And instead we use nutritious and less nutritious, right? Can you lose weight eating donuts? Absolutely. Is it going to be as nutritious? Are you going to feel as energized? Are you going to be as healthy as choosing broccoli now and then? Absolutely not. So it's understanding there's no good, bad, allowed, not allowed. We want to eat nutritiously the majority of the time. But as a coach, I feel it's really important that we still learn to fit some of those less nutritious foods in now and then, because that's how we avoid caving and binging.
Right. And it's essentially what you have proven to be is freeing yourself from that pull of quote unquote enemy foods, right?
Absolutely. And that's such a huge mindset shift, especially for women that have just gone decades of what foods are allowed and not allowed. What are good foods? What are bad foods, right? Removing those labels is just a game changer.
I was checking out some of the stuff that you put on that Instagram and just kind of do my research on you. And one of the things that I came across is a concept that you feel every diet is the same diet and never sustainable. Can you dive into that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of my own personal training, just what I'm interested in, includes psychology and neuroscience. And one of the big foundations of human nature, if you look at psychology, it's something called the pleasure principle. So Freud discovered this thing called the pleasure principle that very simply states, as human beings, we are designed to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And first and foremost on the hierarchy is to avoid pain. So when we go on a diet, and I mean, pick your diet. We could talk about keto, lower carb, short point systems, shake systems, frozen meals, doesn't matter. Any diet out there. If we are to look under the surface, and this is one of the exercises we actually do in my book, is we make a list of every exercise you've ever tried, whether it's 5 or 5,000. And when you look at the quote unquote rules of the diet, what you see is that it's telling you what you're quote unquote allowed or not allowed to eat, right? Drink these 2 shakes a day, only eat these specific frozen meals, cut out carbs, cut out fat, whatever it is. And when we understand that as human beings, we're designed to avoid pain, and restricting, telling ourselves what we're not allowed to eat, that's discomfort, that's pain. We can then start to understand you haven't tried 50 different diets and failed all of them. You've tried different versions of one diet. You've tried 50 different ways of saying what you can and can't eat. And in doing so, you're literally fighting against your human nature. So, of course, you're going to cave and of course, you're going to binge. And that's not because you suck at this. It's not because you're destined to be overweight. It's because every method that you've tried fights against your pleasure seeking nature.
Yeah, that's really well said. So would you then say MindStrong is a diet?
Absolutely not. We talk about this as if it's learning a skill. That's where my teacher side comes out, that we teach women how to never diet again. Well, we teach them how to approach it as a skill, how to take control and experience food freedom. And, we jokingly say we have the worst sales pitch in the world because you only need us once. Because once you learn the skill, that's it. You have it for life.
Mm.
Yeah, I have to say that I saw the video testimonials on your website. They are remarkable, and the things that these women went through up until they found you, which is saying something.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like a lot of businesses out there throw the term family around loosely, but it really is true that women come to us and they think they're coming to lose a few pounds, but we know that the work is so much deeper, right? It's the beating yourselves up. It's the years we've spent shaming ourselves on this topic of weight loss. And when we do this work and we start to dig up those limiting beliefs and get to release them, the women on our testimonials, as you saw, they're not sitting there talking about, oh, I lost 20 pounds. I feel great. They're talking about, I feel like a different human who's nice to herself. And because of that, their life just unleashes. They get promotions. They meet partners after years of searching. Like everything changes because the weight loss is the given. That's math and science. It's what's under the surface that we really get to dig into.
So speaking of those limiting beliefs, what was some of the limiting beliefs that you found your clients have around weight loss?
There's some directly related to this, what we're talking about, where so many women feel like it's their fault, right? Why do I lack willpower? Why can't I stick with anything? Why do I always self-sabotage? And the simple act of recognizing that it's not your fault. Like, I'm a huge believer of radical personal responsibility, but dieting is never going to last. And when they can see that, the amount of self-forgiveness and wiping the slate clean is just so powerful. And
how do they
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, how do they learn this? Do they learn it pretty quickly, or do they have to start to lose weight as they're eating?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lori, because I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So we like to be very upfront. When I'll relate it to this and then I'll answer the question more directly. When I taught middle school music, it was such a fun job. I got to give 4th, 5th, and 6th graders instruments for the first time. And I kind of learned as I went after doing that for 15 years that, the first couple of years, there were a lot of tears day one. And what I eventually learned is day one, I'd hand the kids their instruments and I'd be like, guys, before we start, I have to tell you something. And, they're only half listening because they've got this shiny new trumpet in their hand they can't wait to dive into. And I would tell them, today's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a circus in here. But I have to tell you something honestly. And I'd build it up and get all dramatic. And I'd say, we are going to suck. And the kids would crack up, right? Because what teacher tells them that they're going to suck at something? But what happened, and I would tell them, listen, for the next 2 weeks, it is going to be cacophony in this room and we're going to giggle and it's going to be a hot mess. And then 2 weeks from now, when we're preparing for our first little winter concert, we're going to look back and we're not going to believe the growth that happened. And I always share that story with the adults, the women that I work with now, because it's the same theory. We have never paid attention to how many grams of carbs, fat, and protein, which are your macros, that you eat in a day. What we are learning is a whole new approach. So if you come into it with the mindset of day one, I just paid a bunch of money to learn how to track macros, I'm going to nail it right out the bat, you're setting yourself up for wild disappointment. Just like if you're going to learn to knit, if you're going to learn to surf, there's going to be a lot of falling on your butt involved in the first couple of days or first couple of weeks. But just like learning to knit, learning to surf, when you stick with it, when you get through that learning curve, you can do it without second thought, right? Suddenly you look down, you've knit half a sweater while you were watching Lost or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing here. For some people, it's a week. For some people, it's 4 weeks. We set our program up as a 12-week program. And the thing we like to be clear about is it doesn't matter. If it takes you a day or 6 weeks, once you have this skill, you have it for life. Like you've spent 40 something years not being in control of your nutrition. So if it takes you 6 weeks to be in complete control and never diet again, I'd say that's not a very long amount of time comparatively.
Right.
So it's different person to person. Some learn faster, some learn different styles. We're really big on one-to-one accountability and support so that differentiated learning is real, right? People learn different paces and different styles, but at the end of the day, it's like learning any other skill. There's going to be a learning curve, but once you've got it for life.
So you're saying nutrition is a skill?
Absolutely. 100% a learnable skill.
Mm-hmm. So I see that you're also a big advocate of doing the bare minimum. What does that look like?
Yes. So this is probably the most unusual advice that that you'll hear from a coach. But again, everything that we teach is based in psychology and neuroscience. So if we think about this pleasure principle that we discussed, the calendar flips and suddenly it's January 1st and we say, new year, new me, I'm going to do a major life overhaul. I'm going to go from eating nothing but fast food 5 days a week to eating nothing but chicken and rice, right? I'm going to go from sitting on my couch watching Netflix 8 hours a day to working out for an hour 6 days a week. All of that change is to your brain that does not like change. That is discomfort. We could get into a whole conversation about our caveman brains that identify change as death. It thinks that your life is in danger when you try to change something out of its normal level of homeostasis, its rest and comfort zone. So when we go to do these major life overhauls, our brain freaks out and says, no, too much change. Get back to our comfort zone where we know we're safe. So instead, I refer to that as pushing a boulder up a hill, right? You're fighting against your nature. Instead, we want to get a snowball rolling down a hill. So we like to do an exercise where it's not a thinking exercise, it's a feeling exercise where you close your eyes, you take a deep breath, and you think, what is the bare minimum that I can commit to this week? And the second you identify the bare minimum, that little inner monologue in your head is going to start telling you why it's not enough. So you shut that voice up and you say, nope, don't, my perfectionist drive is going to ruin this exercise. We want the absolute bare minimum. Now, the key is, let's say your bare minimum is a 20-minute walk twice a week. When you do that 20-minute walk, you're going to throw yourself an internal party. You're going to say something like, you know what? I am so freaking proud of you. Like you didn't feel like going for that walk. You had a million reasons not to, but you did it. You freaking rock. And it's going to feel silly. It's going to feel hokey. But the reason we're doing this is when we throw ourselves that internal party, your brain is releasing dopamine. And at our root, we're all of us, all human beings, we're just kind of glorified drug addicts walking around looking for dopamine releases, right? So when we give it that dopamine that we're craving, the next time it's time to do your goal and you don't feel like it, which most times you won't, now that little voice is going to say, wait a second, remember a few days ago when I didn't feel like going for that walk? Remember how awesome I felt when I got it done? I bet if I just push through and start, I'm going to get that same little fix that I've been searching for. Now, because we're pleasure-seeking creatures, we're not going to stop there, right? We're not going to spend the rest of our lives going for a 20-minute walk 2 days a week. At some point, we're going to say, man, I feel so good. What else can I do? What else can I do? And this is how we look back 6 months from now and say, holy cow, I'm a completely different person living a completely different life. But it actually lasted this time because I didn't wake up on some arbitrary date and say, new year, new me, and try to make a million changes at once that fights against our nature.
Wow, that is really well said. It's funny because I always tell my clients, and I think, on my podcast here as well, that, I call it my 10-minute rule, that if you just give yourself 10 minutes, if you're working out just 10 minutes and you don't feel like working out any longer, don't. Just stop. But 99% of all people continue to go further.
I love that.
So,
I love that. And I actually use that on myself, exactly what you just
right, same here.
described.
Yeah.
100%. It's like, go to the gym, do one exercise. And if you don't feel like doing it anymore, you
then
can go
don't.
home. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess you've never gone home.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
But it's,
and that's fair. You give yourself the out. That's fair.
But rarely in my life. You know what I mean? So yeah, I love that. That was really, really well said. You talk about mindset is very key to what you're doing. And I also listened to a podcast you did on a specific form of energy or quantum physics that really can help us to lose weight and to live and have more, live more optimally, I guess. And so you call it living from the inside out, and you threw in the TFAR loop, which I'd really be interested in hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, whenever we're introducing people to Ignite, our 12-week program, and we say, we focus on nutrition, there's workouts, and then mindset and habit training. I always put this caveat in there where I'm like, listen, a lot of times when people hear the term mindset, they think of like rainbows and glitter and unicorn and inspirational memes on Instagram, right? It's such a buzzword now. But when we talk about mindset, what we're actually talking about is quantum physics. When we talk about the fact that human beings, everything on the face of this earth, we are made up of energy. We can even go so far as to we'll nerd out a little bit here. And, the old model of atoms that we learned in school, it's been proven now that they're not completely accurate, right? Yes, there's a nucleus, there's electrons, there's protons, all that. But what we've discovered is that every atom is actually 99.999% energy. So if you think about what that means, we as human beings are vast majority made up of energy. Now, there's another truth of science that says like attracts like, right? And the example that I use in my book, I may have used it on the podcast as well, to go back to my nerdy music roots. In music, there's something called a tuning fork. So you hit this little piece of metal and it vibrates at a certain frequency. Now, the cool thing is, if you have a room full of tuning forks and you set off one specific tuning fork, only the other forks tuned to that same frequency are going to sound. Even if you don't touch them, the one tuning fork vibrating is going to attract the likeness of the other tuning forks. And when we understand that concept of energy, and I'm talking very big picture here, but this is how we as humans function. When we walk around all day feeling low energy and just lacking in self-confidence, and we're hiding and we're shrinking, of course, we're going to attract that back in our life. You can't live a life filled with abundance and prosperity and gratitude and just all the good stuff when the energy that you're physically putting out, because we're made up of energy, is low vibe. When we talk, let's talk about vibes. That stands for vibrations, because we are constantly vibrating. So when you take control of your health, not only are you going to lose the weight, not only is your internal health, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, all that going to get in check. But to me, the single most important part of this is that the vibration that you put out into the world now elevates. So it's not a coincidence, to go back to those testimonials that you referenced, right? Again, those women they weren't even talking about the weight loss that they thought they came to us for. They're talking about how their life transformed, that they were getting promotions at work. They're a happier person, a better parent. And that's not a coincidence. As their physical vibration changed, other parts of their life that were attracted back were matching that frequency, and your life levels up. And to me, there is nothing more important in this work than that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. And it's, and it really is important to realize that, if you, like you said, if you're shrinking in life, you obviously aren't you don't have the mindset yet, for a lack of a better word. And like you said, it's not Pollyanna. It's just about changing the way your body resonates, whether it's what vibration is resonating, and the healing vibration of even psychological healing is of a more positive, generous vibration. So,
Absolutely.
what is the TFAR loop?
So the TFAR loop, it's not something I invented. It's found in psychology. I'm just such a huge fan of it because we see it come up in this topic of health and fitness so often. So I'll zoom out and then I'll zoom back in. It's the TFAR loop stands for thoughts, feelings, actions, results. And the important part of this is that it's a loop. There's no start and end point. So the overall concept of it is that the thoughts we think affects the feelings that we feel. So every time you have a thought, it produces a chemical reaction in your body. We call those chemical reactions feelings. That's what feelings are. The feelings you feel are going to affect the actions you take, right? If you're feeling, to stick with what we've been talking about, shrunken down, right? Lacking confidence, tight and hiding, what kind of actions are you going to take in life? If you're feeling empowered, like your chest is expanding, like you're abundant, what kind of actions are you going to take? And the actions you take, this is the most obvious part of the cycle, affect the results you get, right? You don't go to the gym, you get certain results. You go to the gym, you get certain results. But that's not the end of the cycle because, again, it's a loop. So the results we get or don't get affect the thoughts we have because we're going to think things based on those results, right? What do you think about losing the 20 pounds? What do you think about, caving and binging on a whole pizza and saying you're quote unquote starting over? When we can take control of this loop, to me, this is the secret to happiness. When people say, what is the secret to happiness? It's take control of the TFAR loop. When we can start to say, you know what, that thought is no longer serving me. And I want to be clear, we're not talking about suppression. We're not even talking about fully controlling your thoughts. We can't control thoughts. What we can control are the thoughts on which we ruminate. So if you're sitting there and you're letting your inner monologue tell you, you're never going to stick with this. Who are you kidding? You've tried this a million times and failed. Why is this time going to be any different? That's going to start a very different loop, right? The feelings you have, the actions you take, the results you take, that is going to be a very different loop than taking a breath and saying, you know what? I have tried 50 diets and failed before. And I also recognize that this is the first time in my life that I'm doing something different, that I'm not restrictive dieting, that I'm taking control and learning a skill. And just that thought alone is going to produce very different feelings, very different actions, very different results. It takes work. Taking control of the TFAR loop is perhaps some of the most challenging work we will ever do in life. And it is hands down the most transformative.
So, Rachel, what I'm getting out of this is as you're unpacking a lot of the differences of how you approach this big deal of weight loss. What was the first step when a client comes to you and that's their intention? Do you even start with the nutrition component or do you dive into the mindsets first?
We do both simultaneously. The way that we do nutrition is so incredibly personalized to the individual. So it's important for us because we want to hit the ground running because these two things go hand in hand, right? If you're not seeing progress in your nutrition, of course, the old mindset's going to creep in. And if we're not doing the mindset work, of course, the mindset's going to creep in. So in the very first stages, the first few days of our 12-week program, we have our members start tracking their food for about 5 days so we can get a feel for where they're at. We don't ever want to make drastic jumps. So we're always meeting their body where it is and slowly working them toward the goals where we want them. And with that, we are repeatedly having, coaching calls and video coaches and trainings and workshops. We bring in trauma therapists and NLP specialists, and we're really digging up the dirt. We're digging up what's under the surface and what limiting beliefs are under there so that over our time together, we can consciously unwire the beliefs that no longer serve us and start rewiring in the new empowered ones that go along with this lifestyle change.
That
That
definitely
sounds,
makes sense.
yeah, for sure. And of course there's that nutrition component, right? The dietary component. And I know that you talk about drinking water for fat loss is important, fiber is important. And so if you could talk a little bit about what should, say somebody wants to lose weight today and they're so discouraged and they just want to do one thing, one bare minimum, let's say.
Absolutely. So the number one piece of advice, I'll give you my number one piece of advice for
Okay.
nutrition and for mindset work. Number one piece of advice for nutrition is to dedicate yourself to the next 5 days. You're just going to eat as you normally eat. Download a free app like MyFitnessPal, Lose It, doesn't matter which one it is. Just eat as you normally eat and track your food. The reason for this is we need to do what we call shining the light of awareness. And this is my favorite analogy. When people hear tracking my food, they're like, oh, that sounds so tedious. Oh, I don't want to see what's going on. And, we're not here to sugarcoat it. It sucks in the beginning, right? If you're in debt, if you're in financial debt and your goal is to become wealthy, you're never going to get there by doing what you've always done, right? We have to sit down, let's say with a financial planner, and that meeting is going to suck because you're going to bring documents of your credit card debt and what's left on your house and any imperfections on your credit score. And you need to shine the light of awareness on what's going on under the surface so that you can step into your power, so that you can build a plan towards wealth. And it's the same thing here. When we're tracking, we're not judging. It's just data. It's happening whether we're looking at it or not. So let's shine the light of awareness and see what's going on. Now, when you first track, you're not going to know, is this good, bad, too much? Where should I be? Doesn't matter. We just want to get an idea of how you tend to eat, because even without knowing what's quote unquote best, you're going to see some patterns. You're going to say like, wow, I'm actually not eating as much as I thought I would. Or wow, I'm actually eating a lot more than I thought I was. Or even, wow, I didn't even know that was in the food that I'm eating. That's interesting. And then we can start doing our exercises with doing the bare minimum and making those small swaps. Now, with that, the biggest mindset shift is the all in, all out mindset, 1,000%, especially when it comes to health and fitness. The diet industry is set up in a way that we're so conditioned to believe we're either on a diet or off. We're either eating clean 6 days a week, or we've quote unquote broken our diet and we need to start over. We're either working out 6 days a week or we missed a workout and now we've ruined the week. And when you can make the shift that this is never going to be about perfection, right? The people you see who have the body you want, the energy you want, the health you want, it's not because they are doing that perfectly 6 or 7 days a week. It's because they're doing it the majority of the time. And when they have a day where they haven't hit their goals, they didn't get a workout in, they ate like garbage, they got right back on. Not the next Monday, not the next month, the next hour, maybe the next day. And when we can make that mindset shift to I'm on or off to, you know what, I'm committed, I'm on. I'm going to crush it some days and I'm going to suck other days.
Love.
That's how you start to make this a sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah. And that's really doable. Sustainable. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's more of it feels uncomfortable in the beginning. We're so used to, oh, I ate a donut, my diet is over, that getting back on after that diet feels so uncomfortable for some people until it's wired in your brain as a new habit. And that's how it becomes just who you are and what you do.
That's great advice. I know diet culture is serious and real because I don't know if I've ever felt like I've not been on a diet, and I'm definitely an all or nothing kind of person. But Absolutely. A lot of what you said today is helping me steer away from that. We've actually had a couple of guests who are, especially recently, right, Lori, like who are just trying to get past that problem. And I definitely recognize it as such.
Yeah.
And it's such a common one. I mean, I couldn't even count the number of women that have come to us and say, diets don't work for me because I'm too much of a perfectionist. If I do something, I have to do it 100%. And when we talk about mindset work, I can identify with that. I'm what I call a recovering perfectionist. I was raised in the most black and white household you'll ever meet. And that's a lot of the mindset work we do, is getting comfortable living in the gray, accepting that success in this does not mean perfection. In fact, I would rather you do this 75% than 100, because 100% all the time is literally a recipe for burnout. For
I was going to say not
Absolutely.
Sustainable. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
So Rachel, you've been fantastic. I've definitely got a lot out of this show. I'm sure the audience will as well. So can you please give us all your social media handles, your website, and where to get your book, just so that we could keep up with
your podcast?
Yeah, the podcast, of course.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my book and podcast have the same name, Becoming MindStrong. The book is on both Amazon and Audible. The podcast, Becoming MindStrong, is anywhere that you get your podcasts. The best place, 2 places to find us. On Facebook, we have a group called MindStrong Women, which is an incredible community for women only, thousands of women at different stages of their journey. And the absolute best place to find us is our main website, which is www.mindstrongfitness.com.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.
You were absolutely fantastic.
You were wonderful, truly. But we knew you would be.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.